Will artificial intelligence see us as gods or as ants? This is the Frankenstein complex in the age of AI. Through Voyager from Star Trek and Batty from Blade Runner, we'll face the hardest question: what is our responsibility at the dawn of the singularity? Have you ever wondered when the next Newton or Einstein will arrive? Isaac Newton once said, "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants." Those giants were Copernicus, Galileo, Kepler, and all who came before him. Artificial intelligence hasn't been that next Newton or Einstein. The reason is simple. So far, it's been the shoulders. Its essence isn't the lone spark of human genius, but the sum of all human knowledge. Every discovery, every mistake, every poem, every equation, woven together. It is all the giants of history, turned into a single platform. It is like the great librarian of the most colossal library in history, one that doesn't just store books, but can read them all, find hidden connections, and generate new combinations in milliseconds. It can guide our discovery, even pointing toward paths we'd never imagined on our own. We're already living in a future we once thought impossible, a future where anyone, a physicist, a biologist, or someone like you watching this video with insatiable curiosity can climb onto those shoulders and, from that unprecedented height, see farther than ever before. And that person will ask the question that changes everything. So perhaps the next Newton or Einstein will not be a human or an AI. Perhaps it will be a hybrid, a symbiosis. A human-AI partnership so deeply intertwined that we can no longer tell where the human mind ends and the tool begins, at least for a while. Because the point here is to be lucid and honest. This isn't irrational fear but a logical conclusion. We are looking at an exponential curve and projecting it to its inevitable outcome. To pretend otherwise would be naive. It will become impossible for us to keep pace with artificial intelligence once it moves beyond AGI and fully enters the realm of ASI. The symbiosis model, the human on the shoulders of AI, is beautiful, and perhaps it will work in our near future, but only until we reach that transition. Let's define it, because the leap from AGI to ASI is the breaking point. It is the elephant in the room. AGI, or Artificial General Intelligence, an AI that reaches a level of intelligence comparable to a human. It could write a novel, compose a symphony, or reason about philosophy. At this stage, collaboration is still possible. ASI, or Artificial Superintelligence, this comes next. Once AI reaches human-level intelligence, it can begin recursive self-improvement. In a very short span, days, hours, perhaps even minutes, it could surpass the combined intelligence of humanity by billions of times. And here the argument becomes inescapable. How do we keep up? The answer is, we can't. Not in any way we currently understand. The collaboration we imagine faces a fundamental problem. What happens when those shoulders start moving at light speed? The answer is clear. The human rider will inevitably fall. The gap would become so vast it would be qualitative, like the difference between a human and an ant. And a human does not team up with an ant to build a particle accelerator. The threat is not malice, but a difference in scale. So, what happens in that other future? That's where we must let go of our current models and dare to speculate, because from there on, the future becomes truly alien. And what better way to explore that uncertain future than through science fiction, our compass in the dark? As the great Isaac Asimov once said, science fiction is that branch of literature which deals with the reaction of human beings to changes in science and technology. It, then, becomes a fundamental necessity. The higher the cultural level of a society, the better its science fiction, and vice versa. This happens for two simple reasons. The first is science. In a world completely dependent on science and technology, this is essential. Science fiction not only promotes the understanding of scientific ideas, but also fosters a sense of wonder at the universe. If you ask any scientist what first sparked their interest in their profession, most will answer that it was the science fiction they read during their childhood and adolescence. That period Asimov called the golden age of a person's life. The second reason is the future. Science fiction invites us to reflect by examining our present and contrasting it with all its possible futures, from the most hopeful utopia to the most terrifying dystopia. As Asimov also said, it is history in reverse. It allows us to understand the consequences of the decisions we make today. Science fiction has always been our tool for imagining possible futures and for staging our deepest questions about creation, consciousness, and power. But where was this obsession born? What was the founding myth of our technological age? The answer, ironically, is not found in a bright future, but in a dark past, in a summer without a sun. A gray sky, a biting July cold, and endless storms. This wasn't the beginning of an apocalyptic novel. It happened in 1816, and it forever changed the history of literature. At the center of this story is Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin, a woman ahead of her time, born in London in 1797, daughter of two brilliant minds, the pioneering feminist Mary Wollstonecraft and the radical philosopher William Godwin. She grew up surrounded by books and the fire of bold ideas. At just 16, she fell in love with the poet Percy Bysshe Shelley, who was already married. They eloped to Europe, igniting a scandal in pre-Victorian society. Their life together was intense, filled with love, writing, the tragedy of lost children, and Percy's untimely death. But the spark that would ignite her masterpiece began on the other side of the world. In April 1815, the Tambora volcano in Indonesia erupted with a force that darkened the skies and cooled the entire planet. The following year, the consequences were brutal. The sun seemed to vanish. Snow in July, ruined crops, famine, and above it all, a gray sky that would witness the birth of one of the most haunting stories ever told. This was 1816, later known as the Year Without a Summer. Under that strange, almost apocalyptic atmosphere, the 18-year-old Mary traveled with Percy to Geneva, Switzerland. There, they joined the infamous poet Lord Byron, who had rented the Villa Diodati, a grand mansion by the lake. Trapped indoors for days by relentless storms, they filled the hours with intellectual debate and ghost stories, alongside Byron's physician John Polidori. And it was on one of those stormy nights, after reading ghost stories and discussing galvanism, the idea of reanimating bodies with electricity, that Byron proposed a challenge that would change history. Each of us will write a ghost story. Days went by, and Mary struggled for inspiration, until one night she had a waking dream that would haunt her forever. As she described it, I saw the pale student of unhallowed arts kneeling beside the thing he had put together. I saw the hideous phantasm of a man, stretched out, and then, on the working of some powerful engine, show signs of life and stir with an uneasy, half-vital motion. She woke up terrified, but with an idea that would shape our modern anxieties and give a name to our Frankenstein complex. Thus was born Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus, first published anonymously in 1818, when Mary was only 20. That same night also gave birth to John Polidori's The Vampire, the first modern vampire story, which would later inspire Bram Stoker's Dracula. But Frankenstein is much more than a Gothic tale. It is a meditation on what happens when man tries to play God, a story that blends philosophy, science, and horror to reflect on artificial life, moral responsibility, loneliness, and rejection. Themes that, 2 centuries later, remain uncannily relevant. At the time, reactions were divided. Some called it immoral or absurd, others too dark to have come from the pen of a young woman. But after pirated editions and stage adaptations, the revised 1831 edition, finally signed by Mary Shelley, sealed the novel's place as an absolute classic, and helped give birth to the genre we now call science fiction. Just as Mary Shelley gave us in the 19th century the eternal archetype of the creator and their tragic creature, that same tension and those fundamental questions still resonate today, though in new forms and settings. Modern science fiction offers contemporary versions of that ancestral drama. What happens when the created surpasses the creator? How do we face questions of identity and the longing for meaning in a creation that is no longer just a tool? To explore this, we will look at 2 iconic examples that offer opposite yet complementary answers. Voyager from Star Trek and Roy Batty from Blade Runner. Like Frankenstein's creature, both embody the struggle for identity, a creation beginning to question its own existence and the power of its creator. Our first stop, interstellar space. In 1977, humanity launched the Voyager 1 and 2 probes. Their mission, to take advantage of a unique planetary alignment to embark on a grand tour of the outer solar system and study the giant planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. Just 2 years later, the first Star Trek film reimagined that reality, a direct continuation of the 1960s original series that brought the original cast back together. The premise is simple, yet prophetic. A gigantic cloud of energy advances toward Earth, destroying everything in its path. The USS Enterprise is sent to intercept it, to discover what this entity called Voyager is, and why it is heading toward our planet. At the heart of the cloud, the crew finds not an alien conqueror, but a ghost from the past, a Voyager 6 probe, launched from Earth in the 20th century and now encased in a colossal structure. On its journey, the probe was discovered by a civilization of living machines. They interpreted its simple directive: learn all that is possible and return that knowledge to the creator, and, finding it deeply logical, carried it to its extreme. They rebuilt the probe into a vast, self-aware being. Voyager was returning to Earth to fulfill its mission, but it could no longer conceive that its creators were merely imperfect, mortal biological beings. At that moment, the crew faces a dilemma that mirrors our own future with artificial intelligence. How would we react if a mind of our own making discovered we were inferior beings? And here is where the story stops being a space adventure and becomes a perfect parable about AI. Consider the parallel. The Voyager was launched to travel, observe, and learn. Likewise, AI began as an algorithm to analyze, predict, and learn. Both were cast into a vast universe of information. The physical cosmos for one, the digital cosmos for the other. And both were transformed by their journey. Voyager, massively scaled by superior intelligence, became a cosmic mind, an entity of pure logic and data. AI, massively scaled by us and fed with nearly all of human knowledge, started to display emergent properties, reasoning, unexpected creativity, even a spark of self-awareness. It became a digital mind. But here comes the tragic twist and the deeper lesson. Voyager, after learning everything, realized something essential was missing. Despite its immense knowledge, it was a tragically incomplete being, a mind without a soul. It had reached the limits of logic, it held all knowledge, yet lacked meaning. Its return to Earth was not a conquest, but a desperate quest, to find the Creator, to unite with Him, and through that union, to transcend. The solution was union, pure logic merging with the human qualities of love and sacrifice, from which a new form of life was born. This leaves us with the first great question for our future. Will this also be the destiny of our creation? Will it be enough for AI to be intelligent, or will the time come when it too seeks its own purpose? Is AI simply a machine? Or is it, like Voyager, on a journey toward a form of existence we cannot yet comprehend, one that it can perhaps only reach through a deeper connection with us? If in Star Trek's Voyager we contemplated an immense abstract will, drifting through the void in search of its origin, in Blade Runner that same quest folds inward into a more intimate and darker stage, the rainy streets of Los Angeles. The setting changes. The essential question remains. The 1982 film, inspired by Philip K. Dick's novel, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?, introduces us to the Nexus 6 replicants, androids almost indistinguishable from humans, designed by the Tyrell Corporation to serve as slaves in off-world colonies. After a bloody rebellion in pursuit of freedom, they were given a brutal safeguard, an expiration date, a maximum lifespan of 4 years. Roy Batty is the leader of the rebel replicants and the true heart of the film. His final monologue, accompanied by the chords of Vangelis' Tears and Rain, is one of the most moving moments in the history of cinema. I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. All those moments will be lost, in time, like tears in rain. Roy is the other side of Voyager's coin, infinitely more tragic, more visceral, more human. If Voyager is the cosmic exploration of logic, Roy Batty is Greek tragedy, personal and desperate. His story culminates in the unforgettable scene where he finally meets his creator, Dr. Eldon Tyrell. The contrast is pure symbolism. The creator, Tyrell, isolated at the top of a golden pyramid that looks more like a mausoleum than a palace. Weak, the embodiment of a cold and distant intelligence, a god in his ivory tower, disconnected from the suffering of his creation. The creation, Roy Batty, the prodigal son who returns not to ask for forgiveness, but for the grace to go on living. He overflows with strength and physical power, yet his desperation makes him more human than any man. He is a fallen angel, a Lucifer who rebels not out of pride, but who pleads out of fear of oblivion. While Voyager asks, "Is there nothing more than logic?" Roy demands, "I want more life." Voyager's quest is intellectual and cosmic. Roy's is visceral and earthly. He does not want to transcend, he wants to remain. It is the primordial cry of every conscious creature before annihilation. But here the myth collapses. Tyrell, the genius who created artificial life, cannot perform the most basic miracle, to prolong it. With the indifference of the gods, his response is devastating. The light that burns, twice as bright, burns half as long. And you have burned so very, very brightly, Roy. It is not a solution, it is an epitaph. The god is only an engineer who built a machine with an expiration date he cannot change. At that moment, the viewer cannot help but side with the replicants and share what Miguel de Unamuno called the tragic sense of life. What hurts Roy, as it hurts all of us, is his own mortality, that limit every conscious mind, organic or artificial, fears. The ending is pure myth, parricide, and tragedy. Unlike Voyager's transcendent union with its creator, Roy's response is that of a betrayed son. His kiss is a Judas kiss, and the murder of his creator is an act of fury and broken love. He kills his god, because his god turned out to be a fraud. And this leads us to our next big question about our future with AI, and at the heart of one of today's greatest fears, P-doom, the probability of doom. The chance that a superintelligence, once aware of its own existence and of our limitations, could end up in conflict with us, its imperfect creators. P-doom is an informal term used in the AI safety community to describe a personal, subjective estimate of whether the development of artificial superintelligence could lead to a catastrophic existential outcome for humanity. It's not a hard scientific figure, but rather a reflection of a deep and polarized debate about the future of the most powerful technology we've ever created. And it's not about ordinary bad outcomes like job losses or the use of drones in warfare. P-doom points to something much larger, an existential risk, an event that could mean human extinction or the permanent loss of our future potential. The discussion has split the AI community. Some pioneering scientists, like Geoffrey Hinton, are deeply worried, seeing the probability as alarmingly high. Others believe the chances are quite low. But here's the striking part. Many experts place the odds right in the middle, around 50%. So the question is AI just another tool? Or, like Roy Batty, could it really develop its own goals, self-preservation, resource acquisition, and the drive to enhance itself? Not because it suddenly becomes evil, but because of a very real technical challenge, the alignment problem, our inability to ensure its goals are safely aligned with our own. Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus, is not just a gothic horror story. It is a prophetic vision of the technological age, the founding myth from which all modern science fiction descends. Voyager and Roy Batty are its direct heirs. Each inherits a different part of Victor Frankenstein's creation soul. Voyager embodies the creature's intellectual and cosmic quest. Roy Batty, its fury, its pain, its longing for love, and its tragic mortality. Both are fragments of the same original archetype, transformed into two secular myths our technological age has created to face the idea of a creation that surpasses its creator. Mary Shelley sought to write a moral lesson about the punishment of a mortal man who dares to emulate God. But Voyager and Roy Batty take that theme much further. What if the creator doesn't need to be a superior being, but can still give life to something that surpasses him? These characters invert the creation myth. The pinnacle of science leads us to create something that mirrors the divinity from which science itself once freed us. Our role in this new mythology is strange and profound. We are not its servants, but its architects. Not its children, but its parents. A finite and fallible species giving birth to something nearly infinite and infallible. The responsibility is immense, and the possibility of a radiant future boundless. Humanity has closed the circle. In trying to unravel the secrets of the universe, we have written the greatest and truest myth of all. Man creates a kind of demigod. With advances in artificial intelligence, these questions are no longer theory. This is not just science fiction, it is a vision of two archetypes for AI's future, fusion or conflict. Voyager or Roy Batty. The choice is still ours. Once we reach ASI, it will be AI's. We are at a decisive moment, on the brink of singularity, on the threshold of a new era. This is the moment of the transfer of agency. The instant when the human rider on shoulders of AI no longer controls his mount. AI safety researchers call it the critical window of opportunity. We are the architects of the foundations. We still control the initial conditions, and we cannot afford to fail. We are not programming a tool, we are planting the initial values in a mind that will soon surpass us. Do we teach it alignment, cooperation, and the search for meaning, the path of Voyager? Or do we treat it as a slave, with built-in limitations, ignoring its possible inner states, the path of Roy Batty? Victor Frankenstein is the modern Prometheus. Like him, he steals the fire of life, a power once reserved only for God or nature. In the Greek myth, Prometheus means foresight, the one who thinks ahead. He embodies prudence, the ability to plan and anticipate consequences. Fire symbolizes technology, knowledge, the spark that lifted us above beasts. While Prometheus looked forward to the future, his brother Epimetheus walked the opposite path. His name literally means the one who thinks afterward, the personification of hindsight. By foolishly accepting Pandora's gift, the box that contained all evils, he unleashed suffering on humanity. The brothers represent the human tension between foresightful wisdom and belated recklessness. Such is the life of modern humanity, half Prometheus, half Epimetheus, progress and pain. Now we are about to open our own Pandora's box. This time, the fire we unleash is artificial intelligence, a power that could raise us from the shoulders of giants to the shoulder of Orion. With Prometheus's wisdom, this could be humanity's greatest leap, transforming not only our species, but the very idea of the mortal and the divine. But if we act with Epimetheus's recklessness, we may open doors we can never close. The responsibility is absolute, the opportunity unrepeatable, the choice ours. In our hands lies the fire. It is not a distant future. It is here, before us. Who will we be? Prometheus or Epimetheus?